All right, are we ready? I call the meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, agenda revisions. Are there any agenda revisions? Anybody? No. All right, we'll move on to consent agenda. Are there any questions on the consent agenda? Meeting. Anybody?
I move acceptance of the consent agenda.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Jim. Motion carries. All right. Next up, we have our annual board organization. We need to call for nominations for elections for president, vice president, and legislative rep. Do I hear a nomination for president?
Madam President, I nominate Sadie McKenzie for president.
Second. All right, I guess all in favor? Do we have to do that? Oh, okay, roll call. We'll vote by roll call. So Ida? Aye. Jim?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
I guess I vote for myself. All right. So it looks like Sadie McKenzie is elected as president for the ensuing year. Next up, we have vice president. Do I hear a nomination for vice president?
I nominate Jim Cooper.
Second.
All right. Ida? Aye. Jim?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
And aye for Jim. All right. Jim Cooper is elected as vice president for the ensuing year. All right. Next up, we have our legislative rep. Do I hear a nomination for a legislative rep?
I nominate Ida Royer for legislative rep.
I second. Hope you're okay. We'll do a roll call. Ida.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Chuck.
Aye.
Jane.
Aye.
And I. All right. Ida Royer is elected as legislative representative for the ensuing year. Go. 2 years. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Ida.
Better read the fine print.
For the ensuing 2 years. All right. Thank you, guys. All right. Next up, we have a grant presentation. Aaron?
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for what just occurred. I'm excited with the team, the decisions that were made. So thank you so much. Yeah, 2 years.
Come on it.
We got you.
Yes, it's great. Okay. Yeah, so informational presentation. The first one is regarding the Commerce Grant. And so the original plan was Les and Jessica would be presenting. Jessica is unable to make it tonight, so Les will be providing information about the Commerce Grant that the district has applied for. So this grant will fund replacement of the HVAC controls at Cape and Canyon. We will be sharing this, the plan moving forward. There is a deadline on this grant that Les will talk about. And so let's see, he has a presentation, and I believe you have a copy of this presentation in front of you.
So the slides for it are for the Department of Commerce one are halfway through the content.
Okay.
So they look like that, but they're able together.
Everybody have it?
Yep. Yes.
Great.
Got it.
Okay, so the school district, in response to some of the public feedback that we have gotten about trying to pursue additional funding resources, applied for a Department of Commerce grant. This was something that was a grant package that was announced last summer. Jessica Diener, who couldn't be here tonight, did the majority of the application and worked really hard to put this together. The grant would fund the there we go. So what this project would do is to replace the energy controls in the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system at Cape Horn Sky and Canyon Creek Middle School. The grant is for about $730,000. That's a 15% match. That is a requirement within the Washington State Department of Commerce grant. So the district would be paying around $118,000, plus we would be paying another $47,000 that are likely going to be utility incentives that we would get back. So the Clark Public Utilities and some of the Energy Trust type partners will very likely chip in towards this project. It's a little bit unusual that we're asking you to approve this without the grant paperwork from the Department of Commerce. But the grant has a funding deadline of June 30th, 2025. So it's in the current state fiscal biennium. They may extend that, but we're not guaranteed that they'll do that. And so we're trying to, what we're asking the district to do is to provide us with the authority to sign the contract if we're awarded the grant. We've been told that it's coming. It was supposed to be here in October and then in November. It keeps getting pushed back. But being ready to sign the contract would let us move more quickly to get the work done so that we can meet the deadline of June 30th, 2025. The kind of authority to do this would be contingent upon the grant being awarded. So in the event that something falls through and the grant doesn't come through, we're not going to sign any contracts for anything. The second part of this is to approve the use of McKinstry, which is an energy services contract or an ESCO. And it is an organization that district is working for. They do, they're a really large contracting company, but one of the things that our district has experience working with them on is energy grants where they do a study of building sufficiency. And then they look for grant programs like this one and they help districts apply for them and use the ESCO contracting process to guarantee the district savings through that contract. We're anticipating that based on the initial calculations of the upgrades at Cape Horn Sky and Canyon Creek, that there would be utility savings of about $84,000 per year. The number will get refined as we go through the contracting process. So it would take a little bit less than 2 years for it to pay back for the district. The whole project, including that part that the state would be funding, will pay for itself in far less than 10 years if those energy savings are in place. One of the benefits to the ESCO process is that the contractor that the district awards the package through or using the Department of Enterprise Services contracts is on the hook for guaranteed savings. So when we enter into that contract, they'll tell us, they'll refine that number a little bit, but they'll tell us this is the amount that you're going to save each year. And then they're on the hook to make up the difference if the project doesn't deliver on the energy savings that are proposed. So there's a significant amount of kind of risk mitigation by virtue of them being on the hook to fund the difference in those savings. So do you have any questions about this? It's a little complicated, but.
Are they on the hook to make sure it comes in on budget too?
Yes, actually, it's part of using the ESCO process is that they're required to complete the project. McKinstry is well aware of the June 30th deadline. They haven't also done their part of the contract, so that's the second piece of approval that we're asking for. And the approval of that is also contingent on the grant, so we wouldn't do this without the grant being available.
So so this is our match would be levy funds, right?
This would come out of the capital project money. So this was one of the voter approved projects that was part of the April 2023 levy, the capital levy. What this does is it shifts the burden from local taxpayers to the grant for the vast majority of the project. The project match, so that 15 going to come out of the levy proceeds.
So we're actually potentially gonna save taxpayers. So this is a
Yeah, well,
benefit to the
yes.
taxpayer base.
What will very likely happen is we'll be able to do more of some of the other projects because we have these additional resources to complete this part of it.
So the bottom line is we pay 165,000, but we save 84,000 a year, which is about after 2 years
Right.
broke even and it saves us.
Right, and we're also likely to get utility incentives of about $47,000 back once we complete the project. So it is, as grants go, it's a large amount. But the Keyborn Sky Canyon Creek project is one that very quickly, it's very easy to see that it pencils out. And that's one of the reasons that we were fairly early in getting notice from the Department of Commerce. They looked at it and went, well, this one's a slam dunk in terms of the savings, but also paying for itself.
And then you just need our approval ahead, just so,
So because the next board meeting is
That's what
not until the end of January.
and if something comes up.
If we're anticipating the notice is coming, they keep telling us it's coming, and so we're waiting.
Right.
Very patiently, but also recognizing that we have a limited window. We're asking for approval now so that as soon as we get the grant paperwork, we can sign it and turn it back in.
Okay.
And then start the work with McKinstry, so that we're not losing potentially 6, 7, or 8 more weeks at a
Right.
time.
No, I'm not sure. You said you're asking for approval now
Yeah,
or in January?
We're asking for approval now. That's one of so those are 2 of the board agenda items that are.
Okay, so this an action item.
So further on in the board meeting, we will ask for action regarding, and this is where it's a bit unusual because the information is less just sharing the timeline. And we're waiting, we're extremely confident that this will happen. It's just the timing of getting notice, getting then board approval at the end of January, and then the timeline that we have in getting started with this work, with the ultimate goal of having it completed by the fall of. So the deadline that's established with the grant. And just to mention, so yes, Chuck, as far as an action item, and Jessica identifying a grant that does have a bit of a match, but it's reasonable. For us, it makes sense that we're going to see the savings. It's going to pay for itself in 2 years and then future savings. And it was something we already were planning to do. So there is a cost savings for the taxpayers, because that money then will go towards another
Different
project. Yes.
And once the project is paid for itself, that 80-ish thousand, 84,000 is money that's not being spent out of the general fund. So that's a savings, hopefully in perpetuity.
Right.
Any major disruption to the kiddos, since it does have to be done before the end of the school year?
Not to my knowledge. So a lot of what they're doing is doing software programming on the HVAC controls. They'll also be going through all the mechanical systems. So there will be people up in the ceilings looking into the earth and doors, and making sure all of those pieces are working the way they're supposed to. So like ladders and hallways and stuff like that. And then we'll be working really closely with McKinstry to make sure the building is still heated well enough that it's comfortable, or air conditioned if we get that far into the summer.
Thank you.
It seems like it would be worth doing even if we didn't get the grant. It pays off in 7.5 years. Also, I hate to point it out, but it's all tax money. We're talking about federal tax money versus our tax money locally. So I'm all for it. Has the district done any assessment of what the energy savings might be district-wide on the other buildings if we pursued this kind of HVAC control upgrades?
So the WHS project is also part of the levy funded projects. We don't have a number yet.
That's all right.
It's anticipated savings are.
But yeah, thinking of Gauze and Hathaway, they're both very old buildings. It seems likely that they could also benefit from upgrading control systems. But anyway, this seems like a great opportunity, and glad Jessica applied for the grant. And like I said, even if we don't get the grant, it seems like it's a good investment regardless. Be nice to have that extra, whatever, 480,000 for other projects for sure.
624, right? 624.
Yeah.
Good work.
And we will update you as we receive notice for the grant and then the award that's gonna. Yes. Ready for the next project?
Yeah.
Our next presentation,
Yeah,
yeah,
next
so
one.
Les is gonna stay here, he's gonna talk about the projects that we, for a couple of years, we've identified projects that are necessary, there's a variety of them, you have access to that information. But I want to start with just thanking our community for the support that they've continued to provide us and in so many different ways. And one of those ways is through our levy and the capital projects that we've identified. Les is going to present information regarding just a reminder of those projects and then the next steps. And there's another item that we're going to be asking you to approve in a few minutes regarding these projects and who we've that we're going to plan to work with.
Okay, so as a reminder, I don't know why I thought I was doing these in the opposite order. It makes more sense to do it the other way. But so the district approached voters in 2023 with a package of things that is paid for through a capital project levy. We structured the levy in a way that didn't cause people's taxes to spike. And so we were letting some of the bond payments that the district has sunset. And then we added some capacity back in, which lets us fund some of these capital project needs, which are things that the district has been working on identifying over the last 4 or 5 years. This includes the group at the high school, which we've spent a considerable amount of time talking about. The same type of projects, those heating, ventilation, and air conditioning controls for Washougal High School, replacing the boiler, so that's the heating system at Washougal High School. Working on providing ADA or accessible door operators and all of our sites that don't currently have those, focusing on the schools, so there's WHS, Canyon Creek, Gauze, and Hathaway. And then working on replacing our security system and Gauze, WHS, Cape, and Canyon. And then finally, working on some of the flooring. So this would be the carpet, probably in most of the corridors at Gauze and Hathaway. And then depending on what we're able to do in terms of budget, some of the classroom spaces there as well. So those are all things that we approached voters with. The structure of this was a little weird because it feels like a really long time ago that we were talking with the community about this and then nothing has really happened. That's because we're waiting for the money to start showing up. And the good news is that 2025 is just around the corner and we're going to start working on some of these big projects. So one of the things that we're looking for is that we have a very small and tight-knit team here at the district office. When we tackle some of these really large capital project endeavors, it is useful for us to have people that have construction experience working with the district to help supervise the construction project, make sure that everything is moving smoothly, people who know what to look for. And so we put out an RFQ or a request for qualifications for project management services. We had 6 companies that submitted proposals. A team of us reviewed all of the proposals and then we scored them against our criteria. And then we interviewed the top 2 firms. The district has engaged RNC management in a process to come up with a proposal that was included in your board packet. And they would be helping us supervise these construction projects over the next probably year and a half, or maybe just 2 years. The total project package is about $6.2 million. So that's the scope of work across both years. And the reason that we're doing this is really to make sure that we have enough experience and expertise and people who are familiar with working in public works to be able to supervise these projects. When the district undertook the last couple bonds, so the bonds that happened in 1999 and then the bonds in 2015, we worked with different companies to supervise those things rather than trying to do that work ourselves. It is a very common practice for school districts because we don't have people on staff who can live in this world. Even districts that have undertaken really huge projects like Evergreen and Vancouver still work with outside construction management firms. So Evergreen worked with the company that we're recommending. And RNC Management, which is the one that we're recommending, is the company that the district worked with last on the 2015 bond. So they helped supervise the construction project in Junkyard, CRG, the Excelsior building, the transportation complexes, the covered play structures, the GOT circulation project, and the stadium upgrades. So they're very professional, they're very knowledgeable, they'll help the district avoid pitfalls. There is a cost associated with that, so that's in the board packet. You can see the dollar amounts, and we've negotiated with them. But their track record of delivering projects on time and under budget for the district really is a compelling argument for it being a wise investment of district resources to make sure that we can get this work done. And we've had several meetings with them. Adam Cormack is one of the principals with their organization, is the person who supervised the JMS CRG project. We're excited to have him back. He's incredibly knowledgeable, great to work with, and really great at helping district staff understand where to kind of move things forward and making sure that things are done correctly. And then we get all this done. So we're asking the school board for approval for the RNC contract. The competitive bidding for some of the other pieces. So we're also looking for a mechanical engineering firm that is an RFQ that's likely to post tomorrow. And then we'll be advertising that. And then we'll also be doing the actual bid packages for things like the roof, the security upgrades, and the rest of the list of those projects starting in January and February. So we'll be working closely with RNC as well as with the mechanical engineers or an envelope consultant to design those packages so that we're putting something out that's going to be the right products for us. And then be something that when we go through the competitive bidding product, we're coming out with something at the end of it that we're really will serve the district well over time.
So is this the oversight contractor, sorry.
Yeah.
Are they gonna help with the selection of the engineering design
Yeah.
firm if they're?
Yeah, they will. So that process is really similar to this. So they will support district staff. So that'll be me, Jessica, probably Shalise and Aaron in evaluating all of those packages that come back in from the different companies, help identify the one, and then they'll, along with us, make a recommendation to the school board for which one we should select moving forward. It's likely that those will be in January at the January board meeting. There is a small possibility that we might ask for a special meeting if the timeline starts getting to the point where we're feeling like we're not going to be able to meet. Getting through the construction enough of the construction process to set it up for next summer. So in addition to the construction management contract, we are still pursuing some other grant opportunities. That includes the Department of Commerce one that I already spent time talking about. We have an EDA to work grant, which is funding some of the work at Goss and Hathaway. So it'll do those push button operators that are great for people using a cane or a wheelchair or pushing a stroller, or somebody who's using a hand cart to move boxes. Those are a really great feature. And we're excited to increase the accessibility of those schools. Again, having these external resources helps us complete more of the projects that we've identified in the levy. And we are still kind of chasing some other funding things through things like the small district modernization grant and a couple other packages. And we'll share more with those if we get awarded them.
Questions?
I don't think I have any questions.
I just think if the board is gonna be asked to help select, I just think just leading up to that process, any information we can have ahead of that decision would be helpful. Just any information about the projects or et cetera. Might be useful.
Thank you.
And yeah, so in your board package, you have the contract with RNC, I believe, right?
Right, and so as we've been looking at the plans, the scope of this work, and this, like, we have this window of time where our students are enjoying their summer, and we're working on a lot of these projects, and we will definitely will update you on what it'll look like based on each step that we're taking, and see if we can, can we complete all of these projects in one summer, and more than likely that isn't going to be the case, and we'll prioritize which ones. And if it's gonna be something that happens right before school is out or goes into, September, then certainly we'll let you know, and we'll try to mitigate the impact on learning. But it'll just depend on how our progress goes.
Right, and so in the contract, there's a contingency for extending that contract out for a second year and it's in particular is the high school roof is the one that kind of the initial scope of work when our construction experts are looking at it, they're saying like the odds that you're going to get a company that's able to complete that big of a project in kind of the 9 feasible weeks of the summer. There's a fair chance that you can put that out there and you'll get really high bids because they're anticipating working weekends or paying overtime to have additional staff on site for a longer period of time. And we're anxious to get the work done, but we also want to be able to do it at a reasonable cost. And so it's what we may do is split it into 2 projects so that there's a piece of it that's done in the first summer, which would be summer of 25, and then a smaller piece that's done in the summer of 2026.
Any other questions?
I think
Yep, go ahead, Jim.
I think it's important to point out that hiring a construction management firm is a much more cost-effective way for a small district like ourselves to do this kind of work rather than hiring a permanent staff person that would handle this as a larger district might do. So I'm all in favor of it.
I would absolutely agree with that. You guys are short. You guys have a small group here, and nobody knows how to run a construction company or construction unless you're in there doing it. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Les. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great.
So I did share with you, Les, our next presentation. Yeah, you have it. Disregard. So I want to thank Les and Jessica and everyone who's been involved in the preparation for these projects, this presentation, and again, pursuing additional funds. And we are being very thoughtful with that because we don't want to get into a situation where there's something that we have to commit to that we aren't necessarily wanting to do that. So I do believe that Jessica's really thoughtful and intentional with the decision for this commerce grant. And as Les mentioned, there's a few others we're pursuing. And we'll update you when we find out.
That's amazing that Jessica
It's
did
phenomenal.
that.
Yes.
That's amazing.
It's excellent.
Need to thank her
Excellent
for that.
work.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to go to our next presentation, and this is as a request for our last meeting about more frequent updates regarding the budget. And if you were here last year, really January through the end of the year, there were a number of presentations on staffing and budget, staffing and enrollment. And so we didn't necessarily start the year with as many as we had ended the year. But I think there's a need to continue to provide the board with information on how are we tracking regarding our budget for this year, comparing to last year. And so Alicia and I have had multiple conversations. We've been working on what is the board would be the most helpful for you. As it's a one-pager, you are provided information monthly, but there's a lot of information there. And so we've provided a one-pager here that you can access. Plus, we have a few slides we want to go over, and we will go over this in more detail probably later on in the presentation. So Shalik is going to go ahead and lead us through the slides we have.
So I'm going to start off, like Aaron said, this is us trying a couple different things, the one pager, the slideshow, and then kind of at the end, getting your feedback or comments to what you're wanting to see every month, or how often, or what you like and what you is confusing or you'd rather see differently. Okay, so the first slide is just an enrollment trend. It's this year and then the last 4 full years. You can kind of see the flow of our enrollment. 24-25 is the pink line at the bottom. And I put a couple notes. So November enrollment came in at 2,550 FTE. As a reminder, we budgeted 2,530. So we are 20 FTE above budget. That is really good when we look at it. That means in January, when we start getting our actuals for apportionment, we should be able to see that actualized 20 FTE in funding. The one thing to note though is that when we did the budget, it was very conservative, around a 3% lowering of the FTE. So that's showing we did lower a lot. So as of November 2023 compared to this November, we're down 114 FTE. So we are going down, but we budgeted well enough to be able to see a bit of an increase, which is helpful budget-wise.
I just want to add one note. As we get updates, as our enrollment ebbs and flows, Tracy shared with me earlier today, I do know there's 2 students who have recently enrolled. So we are tracking as each student, you know, as they join us, as well as finding out as much information as possible for students who are leaving, and you know, what are those reasons. So yeah,
it's been very exciting every month to see the enrollment and see it slowly go up, and just hope that it continues.
Because that's usually the opposite.
It's
You say like
exciting.
it tips down after the first few months typically, right?
Mhm. So we're gonna see if we get there, or if it could nicely just keep.
Well, and I do want to add that those students were previously not in our district. I mean, they live in our district, but they were not mixed in the school.
Uh-huh.
Good to us. It's positive.
Yes.
That's positive for sure.
Okay, so this is the change to a graph I showed a few months ago where it was a line graph showing the fund balance in relation to revenues and expenditures. So this is the same graph, but with a different look that I think is more clear to look at. So the fund balance, this is for year 23-24. So the fund balance is the red line. Revenues is the green, and expenditures are the blue. And then we showed the board policy 6% is the bottom, or I guess in the middle dotted line. And then where we're striving to get to, the 8% is the higher line. So you can kind of see in relation our revenue expenditures compared to our fund balance. You can see that dip in December pretty much through February, and then it slowly goes up until we get our taxes in April.
I like this. Yeah, I like this. This to me makes sense.
It looks better, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Shalise,
Yeah.
thinking about the year that we're in, is it possible to project this out, this red line for this year, and kind of see where we might be? And I don't know how accurate your projections can be, but
Yeah, I can definitely do a projection. I do a fund balance projection every month that I update with my estimates as the month goes on. And
Right.
I have that in like a numbers format, so I could definitely put it in this format and change the colors for the estimated months. So you could see
Right.
where I'm predicting that we're gonna end of the year.
I mean, I would like to see, for example, where you are projecting will be in February, for example. Are we going to be down at 100,000 or look negative, or does it look like we'll be able to pay our bills completely? And I realize that's all projection, but you're pretty good at getting the numbers, and I think that would be valuable to kind of have your best guess of what this graph will look like for the 24-25 school year.
Yeah, I can add that to the handout for next month. I can tell you right now that my projection does show that we are going to not have a deficit. So we'll still go down, but we're not going to have the 1%. Right now, my projection is around 3% during the low months.
Good.
I can add that into a graph for next month. Yeah. So any more questions on this slide?
Jim, you have any more questions? Yeah.
Okay, so this 24-25 is the same slide, but showing this year. I kept August in just because when it was only the 2 months, you couldn't see a lot of the fund balance trends. So August is how we ended the year. And then September and October is the 24-25 year. So you can see how we're trending up. As a reminder, October is our levy month. October and April are a big spike, so it does look like it's going up a lot, and then we expect it to drop during the low months and then start going back up for April. So right now that's just showing 6% versus 8% and where we are currently for this year. As of October, November reports when the month ends. It takes the county treasurer around 10 days to do their month-end reporting, and then they send it to the districts. Then we have to do our month-end closing process. So we're in the middle of that. So that'll be in your January report. If the board meeting had been at the end of the month, it would have been done, just not for this board meeting. So next month will be November. So the next slide shows the comparison of September and October between 23-24 and 24-25. You can see in 23-24, it's a small incline as we got our taxes in October, and September to October 24-25 is looking like that steeper incline, which is very positive. And you can see that the fund balance line is higher because we ended the year pretty well. And I put off to the side a little table comparing just our percentage of our fund balances between the years. So you can see if you're looking at the fund balance and thinking, is that good? You can see it compared to the prior year that we are getting there. 4% compared to 6%, and then 5% compared to 9%.
So we pause on this one and think about each month, if you're getting something that's similar to this, then we're starting to see, you know, kind of like what Jim is asking for, like, how are we tracking toward our goal? How are we comparing to last year? You know, we could do it with 22-23 if we felt that was necessary. You get too much information. It's like, what are we comparing? And so I think the idea of just looking at last year, I think that as Shalise has joined us and introduced a graphic that we really hadn't seen before, and then changing it to the adjustment she's made, and then just seeing if this might be something that we could deliver on each month.
Yeah.
And Shalise had shared with me, you know, in a previous district, I would meet with the board once a month. So this is something that she's accustomed to doing. And I think that was like the ask was like, can we be more consistent with this and plan on this kind of presentation? It can be 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It depends on what, you know, what we're discussing. But if it's something like this, and then you're getting used to these, the tables that you're interested in seeing, then we can deliver on those.
The year over year is really helpful from my view.
The what?
The year over year, this comparison specifically, and being able to see the 2% jump and then a 4% jump in October, that's incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
I am curious, what's the big revenue difference in October versus last year? Do we know?
It's just going to be the levy, but also it looks like more of an increase because the levy changes every year. And if we have less expenditures that month compared to revenue, it can look like more of an offset. But mostly the high jump is just the levy. And then last year there were more expenditures that month compared to the revenue.
So it's a combination of items, and specifically, and I know that we are tracking expenses in specific programs, and as we've talked, like the further we get into the year, we're gonna be able to realize, you know, how are we tracking in these specific areas, and we aren't necessarily, you can't see those specific programs in these graphics, but you will see them over time. You'll see that information in your updates.
So what are the variables that could cause your projection to go off?
Yes, so I typically do my projection pretty conservatively. So for the revenue, I think is going to be there, and then high for the expenditures, I think are going to be there, because I'd rather project that our fund balance is going to end a little bit lower and be happy it ends high than project it's going to end high and it ends low. But some of the changes are, you estimate that you're going to get a grant and the grant funding is going to be X amount of dollars. But if something changes or you end up not using 100% of that grant, now that full revenue isn't actualized. A good example is TK. So the budgeted amount we got for TK, but right now in my fund balance projection, I'm estimating we're not going to receive all those funds. If we do, that's great. But right now it wouldn't it wouldn't be a great idea to estimate we're gonna receive it when we don't have any acknowledgement that we will.
So you've already adjusted.
Yes.
Our plan based on the information we received September 26th.
Yeah,
Okay.
and a big funding source we receive every August, safety net. That is a huge process that Connor has to apply for and go out for. It's always an estimate of what we're gonna receive, because you don't know what they're gonna approve, you don't know how much funding they have to give. So that is a true just estimate, and then we hope that we estimated well, but not higher than we receive. So that is a big one. And then there's always extra money you get in, or you estimate you're gonna receive 98% of your taxes and you receive 99%, which is actually a large difference. And then expenditures, you estimate you're gonna spend based on prior year's spending trend, but then you spend less, or there's less extra hours of staff, which is hard to estimate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
So pretty much every month when you're doing your projection, you're changing it. So every month my ending fund balance, what I think it's gonna end, changes a little bit based on what I'm seeing as the month ends.
Thank you. And we could go on and on with,
Yeah.
it could be like staffing
Yeah.
needs.
So many
When you
different things.
hire a new staff member, what was the previous staff member earning? And those are like little adjustments, cost of food as far as culinary,
Right.
cost of diesel, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, like when diesel was going, increasing like literally daily.
Right.
And so all of those things that we don't necessarily know going into the school year, that's gonna happen. You can do things historically, and Chris did, and Shalice is historically, what do we typically see? But those are things that we don't necessarily have control over that will impact us. Substitute costs, we overload. So we are really pleased with the adjustments we made, because we were spending the last previous 3 years, we were spending more on overload than we were necessarily budgeting. And we're very pleased with the reductions we made, and seeing the overload commitments that we have now they're less. Because there was going to be this concern that with reducing staff, we were going to have more overload, but we're not seeing that. We're seeing almost like significantly less overload as we compare it to the previous years. So those are all like, that's a it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily know where that overload is going to be until the students arrive, and now we're in it. I think the best example was TK, where that was something that we weren't planning on. But she's adjusted to that, knowing that, and I was a part of a meeting today where our state superintendent was talking about a variety of topics, and TK was one of them. With being optimistic,
Yeah.
but we can't plan on that.
Right.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Something too.
What I appreciate about this is that I know that the budget that we have for a year, we're guessing 12 to 16 months ahead of time what the financial conditions are going to be. So a budget is an educated guess. What I appreciate for our monthly meeting is, how are we doing? And if we're below what we planned, what are we doing about it? And if we're above what we planned, what are we going to do with it? So that's the bottom line stuff. I really appreciate it.
So the next slide is, we always spend all of our time talking about the general fund. That's our main source. That's where most of our money comes from and most of our spending. There are other funds. We have 5 funds total, with the general fund just being the one that everyone focuses on because it is our main source. All of the different funds have different purposes. So this is 3, and then another one's on the other slide. So the first one is our ASB fund, and I just put little info. So the ASB is a special revenue fund, and it accounts for the revenue expenditures that are legally restricted for ASB purposes. So the ASB leadership runs the fund. They do their own kind of board meeting minutes. They approve POs. They approve everything. They see their revenue. And then this shows the 23-24 budget compared to the actuals, and then this year's budget compared to the year-to-date to October actuals and where they are. And a good thing to note for the ASB is the students do create their budget. So it is very student-led, overseen by the staff and overseen by the board, but the students account of how they're planning on spending their funds. So the next fund is the debt service fund. This is our pretty much our bond account, the voted and non-voted debt. The money goes into the account to pay the debt. And then you see payments out of the account as we pay down our principal and interest on our bond debt. So that fund is restricted just for the purpose of making sure we have the principal and the interest to pay off our bond. And again, the budget compared to the actuals for both years. And then we have the transportation vehicle fund, which I call the yellow bus fund. So it's really a capital projects fund, but it's used specifically for the purchase and any major repairs or renovations of yellow buses. That is all you can use the fund for. You can't do other vehicles in it. It's just for buses.
So understand that, and we have other
Yeah.
vehicles in our fleet. We cannot use these funds at all for our vans or the other vehicles that we have.
Yeah, and the transportation vehicle fund is actually funded mostly off of depreciation. So when you buy a new bus, they stay on the depreciation schedule for 13 years, and they depreciate with the state. And every July, we get depreciation money based off of our buses. And that revenue is restricted. It can only go back into the transportation vehicle fund. And the hope is that you plan so that as that money comes in, you can purchase new buses to go back on the depreciation schedule. Because as buses fall off, you want to replace them because now you're not receiving your depreciation revenue.
Right.
And that's really what you use to buy new buses. If you're not doing that, then there's districts, you go out for a transportation vehicle levy to buy buses, and districts sometimes have to do that to buy a fleet of buses because so many fell off their depreciation schedule. They don't have enough money to, update their fleet. So I feel like the district is really good at keeping track of that and using the depreciation funds to buy new buses. Pretty much there's a plan like 5 years out of what buses are going to be purchased.
Is there any talk about potentially having that, and I know it's a state level thing, but change so that it could include vans? Because some of our rural areas, I know we've talked in the past about it, be much more cost effective to run vans for specific things than buses.
Right, and so we actually had a meeting a couple days ago with David Sal, Les, Lisa and I discussing transportation needs and just that. That hasn't happened yet, but there are discussions about the possibility. What did he call those buses?
Minibus.
A minibus.
Microbus.
Microbus. Yeah, there are, yes, right now that isn't the case, but we're hoping that would be something that could be established so that we could spend these funds on the microbuses. And we were talking about, again, based on the conversation we had with our students up at Cape, describing the length of some of their rides to and from school. And could we make some, could we adjust those runs to reflect, so shorter a time with smaller buses or microbuses.
Do the microbuses require the same certification?
They
and
do not.
fix them?
Do not.
I just want to see what a microbus looks like.
Yeah.
It
So we're
sounds
looking
adorable.
at, we're also looking at, other types of buses and seeing what we could possibly do moving forward with these purchases.
Who holds that decision
Decisions to
include microbuses in the transportation?
so OSBI, the Department of,
State.
yeah.
And David said it's currently in talks from what he knows. It is being discussed about adding it to that.
So that's a state superintendent then, or?
I would imagine a combination of Department of Transportation, some involvement, like a collaborative effort in determining if that's, and I don't know enough about the details. We certainly can find out like where that is in the decision process, who's involved in that, and would it help to advocate?
Yeah.
Maybe the district could advocate for themselves and not behalf of.
We could bring those kids. We can bring the kids from up there that we're
Or just
saying.
make them watch a video of those kids on an hour-long bus ride twice a day. Still watch that. Do that 5 days a week.
The, since our district is compared to the other Clark County districts includes such a big rural area, it's an issue that our district faces more than Evergreen, Vancouver, whatever. It might be worth planting that seed in our legislators' ear that we could use their help in lobbying for that change. It would really make a big cost-effective change for our district.
Yeah, I agree.
Can I ask a question about the debt service fund?
Yes.
The revenues are falling off and
Mhm.
expenses are going up. And can you help me understand what's going on there?
Yes, so bonds are typically 25 to 30-year bonds, and there's a bond schedule that we actually work with, I'm gonna say this wrong, Porter Foster, Boric, is it? They do our bond schedule for us that shows our principal and our interest every year and what we're gonna owe.
Right?
So as it goes on, we do receive less revenue and pay more because really at the end of the bond, once the bond's paid off, the debt service should be close to zero.
Zero. Okay.
Because the point is that we're getting money in just to then pay it off. It's like a flow through account.
Right.
And it's on a pretty strict schedule. So whenever we budget every year, we know exactly what the principal and interest payments are going to be to budget.
Yeah. There again, projecting out, if the revenues continue going down and the expenditures continue going up, will be less than zero in the fund balance. But is this, I don't really understand how bond funding works when we, as a voter, when I vote in favor of a bond, school bond, is that also voting then for a set tax rate to pay that bond to feed this debt service fund? Is that kind of how it works?
When you vote for the bond, there is a tax rate associated with that.
Okay. And does that maintain for the 25 or 30 years of the bond's term?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, and before all of that is done, those partners that I spoke about, they pretty much calculate it all for us and figure out how the payoff is going to work to ensure that what we ask for and how we pay it off is going to balance out.
Okay. And can you guesstimate when our bonds will be paid off?
I've seen it. I want to say,
2034.
okay, I was gonna say 35.
Yeah, 2034.
34.
Okay. Thank you.
December 1st.
Wow.
2034.
At midnight.
Yes.
Any other
Well,
questions about that? Okay.
Okay, so our last fund, but probably out of the 5 funds, general fund and capital projects are probably our most used funds and our bigger funds, where the other 3 are not used as much. So this is the capital projects fund. It shows the 23-24 budget versus actual and 24-25 budget versus year to date, which is October actual. And I put a couple notes on here. So the budget assumes that all the capital projects facility planned items are being completed. This is a normal process. Normally when you budget, you don't know, right? You don't know if the roof's going to cave in or if there's going to be leaks or however. So you budget anything that you think might happen, or for Washougal is in the capital projects facility plan. You budget that to be spent, not knowing if you're going to spend that money. But it's better to have it budgeted than have something happen, have to do an emergency board meeting, get a budget extension board to get the authority to be able to use the money. So you can see in 23-24, the budget was 6.3 million. So that was assuming that capital projects facility planned items were going to happen. With the thought that they probably weren't going to, but they're in the plans, they're going to be budgeted. You can see the actuals, only $200,000 was spent out of the capital projects fund last year. And I did note that this also includes our impact funds. So we get impact funds when the community grows. And there are impact funds that there's only certain projects that money can be used for. So it's very restricted money. So some of the projects are portable, extending the warehouse and land purchase. And so those are budgeted every year because they're in the capital projects facility plan. But most of the time, as in last year, there's no plan to actually do the projects. But since they're in the overall plan, they're budgeted in case something were to change and they were going to
Say that
happen.
one more time. Sorry.
About the impact.
Yeah.
funds, or
Just that last part.
Oh, we budget all of the plans.
Okay,
So all of the projects that are identified are budgeted.
okay,
Because they're identified, they're put in the budget.
okay,
And a lot of times they're put in the budget, but there might not be an actual plan for it to happen that year.
okay.
Which is what you can see with the 6.3 million
Right.
budgeted versus the 200,000 actually spent. And if we went into the detail of the budget that was sent to OSPI, one says portables, one
Right.
says increasing the warehouse, which is all in the facilities plan. But nobody actually, thought it was going to happen,
Right,
but it's in the plan, so it's budgeted in
It
case
needs-
something changes.
okay.
With those impact funds, do we retain them until we need them? Is it a use it or lose it after a set amount of time?
It is. Yes, it
And
is.
what
It
is that?
Yeah, 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah.
Are we at risk of losing any impact funds that we've gotten so far? And if so, what's our timeline and how much?
Yeah,
I'm
so
sorry,
we-
I'm asking a
yeah,
lot of
so we- Yeah,
questions.
so I think we can, so for a future agenda item and a presentation, we can certainly provide specific information regarding our impact funds. And so we can do that.
Yeah, that's something we're still learning about. So digging into it more and getting more information about it. Normally, when you are having community growth and you're getting your impact aid, impact funds, not impact aid, that's a different funding thing. Your impact funds, you use those funds as your growth is happening because that's when you're eligible to use them.
Okay,
In this case, that did not happen, so the funds were not used when the growth was happening. So to be able to use them now, we need approval for certain projects to happen.
Approval from.
And those are in our plan, so they
Yes.
need to be in the plan. We work with the county, we work with the city on the development of that plan, revising that plan. And so that's something that happened. Yeah, 22, 23 revised the plan. Our current plan is due 2027. So it's a process that, and districts can revise their plan. So, yeah, we will, our commitment would be to present additional information to you at a future board meeting. Just got to establish when that's going to be.
okay.
All right. All right, so I think that's our last slide, right? So that was a monthly update.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, you know what? I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah, one more
This is
slide.
your slide.
This is my slide. And so, yeah, when we think about the work that we did, approved last board meeting, previous board meeting discussing our legislative priorities, what we've identified, and I just want to keep this, at most board meetings, like just a reminder, as we move closer to January and when our legislative representatives begin the process for this spring, and we know that there are going to be some very challenging decisions and discussions. We want to advocate on our behalf for not only Washougal, Clark County, and for the state, for our legislative representatives to consider our priorities, as well as we looked at, and as we established ours, we looked at WASDA, WASA, AWSP, so a number of organizations. And so it's going to be important for us to share our story. That's a consistent, advice that I'm hearing in numerous meetings is tell your story. So our local legislative representatives, we know who they are, we are connected to them, and we want them to understand the challenges we're facing and what we're doing, right? When we're looking for additional funds for the projects that we have. And we understand, and the governor recently talked about a $10 billion shortfall for the state, and recognizing, as we've talked about our own challenges, the state has challenges. They need to prioritize where the funds that are available are going to go. But this is very important to us. And I think that we are doing what we need to do to be fiscally responsible. And the projects that we've identified and presented, they're necessary. So anyway, thank you for that work. And again, we just want to be sure as we are going to be going to legislative. When is the legislative? January 11th, 12th. Yes, excited about that. And there's an opportunity there to share our story.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
One quick question.
yes.
Sorry. So not to rewind too far, but so the capital projects, there's transfers to other funding. Would that impact this very much?
No, so,
Question.
the transfer from other fund, that typically has been the general fund to the capital projects fund, $50,000 every year. That's been in the budget resolution. That was not in the budget resolution for 24-25. So if we decide to do that transfer this year, it would be a separate approval. But that is us building a fund to replace the turf, where the transfers to other fund is the capital projects, reimbursing the general fund for levy tech items, which is money from the levy.
Which was approved in
Which was
August for
approved in the budget resolution.
Right, so in a sense, it will show up on that chart, but it'll be in both columns. Because it'll be a matching expenditure and then the reimbursement of that from the other fund.
Gotcha.
So it won't affect the red line, but it'll both of the columns will get slightly higher in the months when we have those.
Kind of just like a pass through.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
In terms of the levy revenues, are we anticipating that the rate is fixed by the vote of the past the levy, but property values continue to increase? Do we build in some anticipation of property price escalation in this?
No, we don't. Typically, when you go out,
Fine.
typically when you go out for your levy, you can decide like, this is going to be the levy rate. This is going to be how much I believe I'm going to be collecting. And when you go out, you could have an estimated property value inflation rate. So you're estimating you're going to collect more. But if that's not what was approved in your levy, then you can only collect what the resolution originally said. So if it said I'm going to collect 250,000, you're capped at 250,000.
Thank you.
If we hit that 250,000, then that part of our property taxes just drops off the annual tax bill, or just curious how that works.
I believe then it would lower the tax rate. It's the same thing as what happens with the EP&O, which is our general fund levy, where we are capped based on enrollment. So if enrollment were to go down, the levy rate would go down.
Thank you.
The capital projects isn't by enrollment, but it still has what you went out for in that resolution is your cap.
Okay.
When we talked about that last year, that was the levy rollback, that $700,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then the one pager was just the attempt. It should have a big draft across the side of it. So just like, we're trying to find out like what would be most helpful for you. Was this presentation helpful?
Are there slides you'd like to never see again? Are there slides you really enjoyed? Do you like the one pager better? Could you do without the one pager? You can think about it.
Yeah, let us
The
think
answer
about
Would you-
it. Yeah, can we think
Yeah.
about it and then?
And I think too, do we need a presentation every month or just the
I could
information?
fit this in a document like this
There we
online
go.
and be able to view it and maybe just have a chance to ask a couple questions if we had it about it. Because this
Yes.
is very consumable.
Jim, what do you think?
I concur. This,
Okay,
for me, this was valuable.
okay,
And I agree with, I think it was Jane that said, we don't need to have it presented every month, just have access to the information. I like the fact that it's concise enough that this was 3 pages or something, maybe 4, but it's not 4 pages buried in 40 pages where it's just harder to digest 40 than 4.
Well, and you don't,
42.
what's that?
I still want the 40s to be.
So yeah, we
I
don't
like
need to
looking at
continue
that.
to keep the slide that talks about our priorities, because you know what those are. So if we reduce the total number,
Yep.
you got this in advance. Shalice was available to answer any questions.
Yep.
Then that probably would reduce this to 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the situation.
Yeah.
We can certainly do that. If this is the format that works,
Yeah.
then it's really nice. It's easy for us to duplicate and just update.
Yeah.
And we can do that, and we won't mess with a one pager necessarily.
Just-
If this works in this format, it's large font, it's fairly easy to read,
Yeah.
it's fairly easy to update, and then we'll just.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of tonight was overview and 30,000 feet about funds and so forth. We don't need that. All we need is where are we now and how are we doing?
yeah,
And Jim's projections.
yeah, the projection. I like that what Jim said earlier about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful too.
Okay, thanks, Shonice.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Right. Next up, it looks like we have citizen comment for specific to action items and policies below.
Yeah, we don't have.
We don't have anybody for that. Okay. All right. Next up, we have approval of construction management firm. Aaron.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do the resolution process.
USD, hold on, I'm
The
sorry.
Did I miss
resolution
one?
Process.
Oh, yeah, so the discussion, thank you.
Oh.
Discussion about how we present, when we present resolutions.
Yep.
And then the opportunity for the board to, I think, have more discussion in between the presentation of the resolution and the decision regarding the resolution. And I think Jim wanted to discuss this probably more detail about that.
Yeah, I just brought it up because I don't think we need to change our policy, but I would like to see us change our procedures for adopting resolutions that unless it's some kind of an emergency situation, the board / the public has an opportunity to learn about the resolution in a workshop, think about it, come back for the vote and be able to have an informed input into that decision. I think it would improve our transparency with the public. I think it's just a better way to do business. I know the city workshops pretty much everything they vote on in a business meeting. And I think for resolutions, the latest one being that land option, we all would have benefited, in my opinion, if that had been presented in a workshop. The public knew about it. They didn't have to hear about the carnival. They could come and make their comments in a timely fashion before the vote is already taken. And again, I don't think I'll ask Superintendent Hanson if we need to. I don't think we need to change any policy. It's just kind of an operating procedure of the way I think a better way to do adopting resolutions by the board would work better that way.
Thank you. And then in considering resolutions coming up, the idea that we would time it, so that would be the case. We could present it at the first meeting of the month, and then as you said, if there's an emergency and we need to move a resolution, then you're open to that. I understand what your expectation is, but you understand that there are times where, like in December, we have one.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And this isn't the only time. And then there might be a situation where it's going to require us to present the resolution and get a decision on it.
Yeah. Well, the parallel is for board policy. We present it first reading, you can discuss it,
It does.
and then we act on it next meeting. We can do the same thing.
It absolutely does parallel that, right?
I really think it will avoid the criticism that could be leveled at the board that we're acting on important issues without sufficient public input. But that's my only, I just wanted to bring it up. I thought about it after the last meeting and I thought it might be worth discussing.
Yep, we agree. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, so now we have the approval for the
Yes.
Construction
proposals for
management.
action.
Yep.
Yes. So the first one is approval of construction management firm. So as Les presented on RNC management and how they're going to help assist us in supervising the projects that we presented on. The use of construction management firm will ensure that the work outlined in the capital levy is completed following all applicable procurement rules and state requirements for work. So definitely something that's to mitigate risk to the district and make sure that these jobs are done successfully. We're asking for approval for that.
It's important to have this, no question. The question that I have is that we've been presented with the need and we've been told that staff has identified a firm and therefore we should accept that firm. It would be helpful in these kinds of things to say, we had 6 firms were considered, here were the strengths, here are the weaknesses, and this is why we settled on this one, as opposed to just, this is who we want, vote for it.
Yeah. Understand that. Yeah, we certainly can provide that information in advance in the
Yes.
Yeah, in the action request.
And
And actually in leading up to that, additional information on this process.
I move we approve the construction firm that was identified.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next one is approval to accept Department of Commerce grant contract if awarded. So as last presented, the uniqueness of this is, we've been told informally that this is something that is gonna be moving forward, but it's not official yet. So we're asking for this, the district will receive $623,000 of grant funds as a result of this grant that we applied for. So we're asking for you to approve us moving forward with this as a result of the limitations in time. And we believe this is, we're going to find out in January. I'd like to move forward.
Move to approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. And connected to the grant is working with McKinstry, along with the Department of Commerce grant, if it's awarded. So that's who we will be working with. So as Les stated, that once that decision is made, then we can move forward. And it's McKinstry who's going to be supporting us through that process. We're looking for approval to enter into contract with them if the grant is awarded.
Move to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have comments from the Board of Directors. Who would like to start this evening? Chuck, why don't you start this
I
evening?
will start.
All right.
Back in 2010,
Okay.
the school district, through citizens, started the Festival of Trees. This was the 15th annual. We missed a year or two due to COVID, but I'm sure everybody in this room was there this last weekend at Hathaway School and saw all those beautiful trees and all that beautiful money coming in from our schools. And so it was just a joyous project.
What do you have for us?
Mhm.
Right.
Thank you.
Jim?
Comments. I want to thank Superintendent Hanson and his whole team, our team, for addressing some of the questions I raised at the last meeting and for working toward better strategies for communicating the financial information to the board. And I think, I'm looking forward to further work on financial issues that hopefully will lead us to an improvement plan so we can have a financial situation in our district where we don't have to lose any sleep over it ever again. I want to thank Mrs. Henley and Mr. Healy up at the Cape Horn Sky Canyon Creek for their hosting our visit up there. I really appreciate the teachers' willingness to let random board members just drop in and observe and experience their teaching craft. And I really want to express my appreciation for the student panels that they put together. That was so insightful for me to hear not just roses, but thorns that they see in their daily trek to the school. And I think Jane mentioned it, or maybe Aaron mentioned that the bus time was something I wasn't fully aware of. But when I thought about it, it makes sense. Yeah, you have to fill an 80-person bus with kids. It's going to take a while if they're 2 miles apart from each other. So I just thought that was one of the more valuable school site visits that I've attended, and I appreciate that. And for people that celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas, and for everybody, Happy Holidays and Happy New Year. I look forward to a successful 2025 and a better future 26, 27, 28. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Jane?
Yeah, kind of along the lines of what you mentioned, just a big shout out both to the boosters at all the schools between like the Festival of Trees. There was a Harvest Carnival not too long ago there. And then for the teachers, the Christmas or holiday concerts that I know they're putting in extra time to bring up. It's a busy time of year for everybody. And I know they're all going above and beyond to make everything work for the kiddos and make it an enjoyable experience. It's just a thank you.
Nida?
I guess I would just bring up again my interest in getting more regular updates on our academics. I know Tracy is gonna present in grants, but I guess just more information on, what we're doing to boost our achievement scores. Again, I know people work hard, but I know we can do better. So what are we doing to try and do better? I would like to, I know Jim had posited having a discussion about that. It wasn't on this agenda, but maybe in a future agenda about like how we can do that. I also, as we're rolling out these big construction projects, if we could just get a really quick update every month on like, okay, what are we doing? Like, what are the activities this month? Just so we can keep track, because that's a lot of money, you know, a lot of taxpayer investment. I think it'd be really good, just to, you know what we're doing and how we're putting those dollars to work. So those are just two thoughts. Otherwise, I know it's been, you know, 1/4 of the year, but it's been busy. So just thanks to everyone for starting out this year. I feel like we're in a better place than we were this time last year, financially and otherwise. So there's been a lot of work to make that happen, a lot of sacrifice. So I just want to recognize that. And yeah, have a great break for those who are taking time off.
I just want to thank my team for electing me again to be president, and for Mr. Cooper for being our vice president,
Here,
and for Ms. Ida over here for taking on ledge rep. We appreciate you guys. I love our team. We are learning, you know, our meetings are changing, and we are just working towards making this our meeting, our team, you know, our vision, I suppose. So please hang in there and stick with us while we figure all this out. And thank you, teachers, for putting up with our wild kiddos as they venture onto their Christmas break, because I know they're being a little wild right now, but I think everybody's just looking forward to having a little break. And Merry Christmas to anybody that's listening. All I got.
Hey,
Aaron, you got anything?
I have a few items, yeah.
All right.
Okay, let's see what else. So yes, busy time. There's so much going on. I think last week was one of the busiest. I asked the building administrators yesterday at a meeting, was that the busiest week? Could we have gotten anything more into last week? Festival of Trees. So Chuck talked about that. Thank you for being there. I saw you and your spouse working on Saturday, assisting and supporting. So thank you for volunteering and for helping with Festival of Trees, which is a wonderful tradition. Our team here had an amazing tree. They now received 1 vote for sure for best tree. The festival. That vote came from me. I thought there might have been more. I didn't get a chance to count those. So yeah, love that Hathaway, Wendy, and the parents that support put that together. It has changed hands over the course of several years. We're going to continue, I think, to look at it and adjust to what they think is the best way to move forward. But just a really phenomenal stuff the bus. So something that we do, and I shared in my weekly to you, like something we've done for nearly 20 years, I believe. And what an event, and the focus by our students on our community, and that is all for our community. So it's student led. I appreciate everyone who contributed to Stuff the Bus. We happened to be there. The timing was perfect, Tracy. When we got there for the board visit, here came our high school students, and all the Cape students were out cheering, high-fiving as our high school students were gathering the items that stay. Many of those items stay there upriver. There's an agreed upon location for specific items. So really appreciate that we support our community in that way. The parade. So the parade was wonderful Thursday night. We had one of our buses was all dressed up and just looked so good. Our band was there playing, our choir was there. So I saw many staff members participating, also being there and just viewing. And it had been a few years since I had been to the parade, and it was a great event. Loved seeing everyone there. I shared with you the presentation to the Camas Washougal Rotary with the John Anzalone, Dr. Anzalone, who's the campus superintendent. And so the opportunity to share with Rotary, we're going to share in January with the chamber, just the state of the schools. And, you know, there's some challenges. We talk about the challenges, but there are so many things that are going well in our school district, in this community. So it's easy to talk about those things, but also talking about our thorns and how we're addressing those. Festival of Trees, we talked about Walk and Knock. So then basically the week ended on Saturday, where we hosted the Walk and Knock truck for Camas and Washougal. So many of our students participate, our Interact students were connected to Rotary. Many of our staff, Unite was there, community members who were there, gathering food for the 40th Walk and Knock. And so all of that, all those items went to the warehouse, Clark County food warehouse, was a food bank, to be then distributed throughout the year. So it was a great week in reflecting back. So amazing. Today I mentioned Chris Reichdahl did a presentation as an hour OSBI state update. So he talked about a bunch of items, a lot of things that we talk about and the impact on school districts. And I so appreciated not only all the information he shared, but how he shared it and recognizing he's a former educator, recognizing the work that's happening, the challenges we're faced with. And so specifically TK, he talked about that. He talked about the shortfall and the 4-year cycle, the budget for the state, and kind of how that works and the numbers that are being presented, and why that is. He talked about this, the digital, like our work that we're doing with our cell phone policy. So he said there's going to be an expectation by the state. They're going to be asking. So when they say there's going to be an expectation, sometimes that means we're going to survey you in the spring, and what have you done with your telecommunications expectations, policy procedures. So we are working on that. So I will be able to say this is what we've been doing. And when we were at Canyon Creek, I didn't see one student out with a cell phone. When I've been at Jump Guard, I don't see devices. When I'm at the high school, I'm not seeing devices in the classroom. So we didn't change our policy, but we changed our practice. We need to update our policy, and we're planning to do that. We want to get feedback from our students, from our community before we make revisions to that policy. So we talked about that. He talked about binding conditions. He talked about what happens when the district's in that situation where they don't have funds to pay for their expenditures. And so you can borrow, in essence, get some money from your future apportionment. So he talked about districts that are doing that. That is, we are not a district that is doing that. But he talked about the more and more the situations that are happening across the state. So again, he talked about a lot of things. He talked about fund balance threshold. He talked about the 60, we talked about this last board meeting. He talked about the 60-day cash on hand, in essence, expectation from auditors, which is about 16% fund balance. And the state superintendent said that would be really challenging if we established a threshold like that. And that's not possible for many of the districts in the state, but just talking about an understanding of the challenges we're faced with. And I think, again, we made adjustments in the spring. We're looking at this year. It has been a good start to the year. With all the things going on, I think it's been actually a phenomenal start. So looking forward to continuing this work. And yes, people are ready for a break. And so we have a week and a half of school left. I will tell you, there's so much activity in our buildings during the day, during the night, on the weekends. I saw that on Saturday as I saw basketball practice, both boys and girls, baseball doing an open gym, ASL practicing for their upcoming performance. It is just, there's so much activity.
High energy.
High energy.
High energy right now.
Right. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Next we have citizen comment. Do I read this?
Yes, please.
Right? Okay. All right. There's an opportunity for citizen comment at tonight's meeting, both for proposals for action and general comment. The board and administrative staff would like to hear comments from the public. This is our time to listen to you because this is a business meeting of board of directors. The board will not respond to any public comments or questions or engage in conversation with a speaker. If follow-up action is appropriate, we will direct the superintendent to do so. Address comments to the board as a whole, not individual members, staff, or other audience members. We ask that you state your name. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. If you hear a bell, we ask that you conclude your remarks. Up to 30 minutes will be allocated for public comment tonight. The board appreciates, listens, and cares about the broad range of perspectives in our community, and we value everyone's comments. Thank you. All right, first up, we have Cindy Barber.
My name is Cindy Barber. I have lived in Washougal for the past 24 years. 2 of my grandchildren have attended our schools, and I have been an employee of the district for 10 years now. In my 10 years working in here, I have been through 1 communication director, 1 CTE director, 4 business directors, 4 SPED directors, 3 curriculum directors, 3 HR managers, and 4 superintendents. The current budget issues we face have affected every department in this district and every person in this district. Workloads have been shifted to try to cover as best we can and still make this a successful environment for our kids, because in the end, that is why we are all here. Most of us have taken on these extra duties with the determination to succeed. Because I feel they don't get enough recognition, I just wanted to give a shout out to our current exec team. They have been downsized and have had to take on more duties, as have all of us. The weight and responsibilities on their shoulders have been huge the past couple of years and will remain that way for the near future. But they come in every day positive, smiling, and lifting our spirits, making us proud to be part of this team. I would like to make a special shout out and show my admiration for Superintendent Hansen, who gave up a permanent position last spring to stay with us as the interim superintendent and help lead us through this battle. He is always positive, encouraging, and makes me feel seen and heard. I have seen him stop what he is doing to meet and greet people coming into the district office for any reason. He will strike up conversation with them, asking them questions and really listening to their opinions. He really genuinely cares about everyone in this district, and it shows. I want to say thank you, Erin Hansen, for being such a wonderful role model and doing this very difficult time, and hope personally and professionally that he will continue in this role going forward. I am very proud to be part of this team.
Thank you. Right, we have Robin Lowen.
Good evening. My name is Robin Lown. First off, I'd like to give a compliment to the Vice President, specifically about public input comments before resolutions are passed. That you need transparency, you need some publicity. So, the public is aware of a resolution that's coming up. Specifically, we're talking about a resolution regarding a purchase of some property up on Southeast 20th Street and 242nd. That property up there, you apparently passed a resolution to purchase it for $1 million. We have some issues with that. And specifically, we're wondering if due diligence was done by the board or whoever is making this decision, whether or not that is a good purchase. And we went to the county commission last Friday, as a fact, to find out about whether they're going to either accept that into the urban boundary area, And what I got out of that is they couldn't make a decision because there's some environmental questions that need to be answered before that can even happen. There was back in 2016, there was an agreement made by a property owner. I guess his name is Keyser. He wanted to build a bunch of houses, and he got an area there where he could build a whole bunch of houses in a small area, and the rest of that area was supposed to remain forested and not developed. Well, now The school board apparently has decided to buy that property with the idea, and it's my understanding, it's the idea of putting a school up there at some point. You know, and I've heard 10 to 15 years from now, I don't know. I don't know what your plans are. You know, but there's some issues with that property. There's some environmental issues. There's some tax issues, zoning issues. The roads up there, if you've not been up there, they're terrible. Very narrow. I don't know who's gonna control the roads once you guys buy that property, if that's what you do. You know, is that gonna be county? Is that gonna be city? Who's gonna be in charge of zoning? You know, there's a lot of issues and questions that we have, people who live in that area would like to know the answers to. So we would like you to reconsider your resolution. I don't know if it's, once you pass a resolution, is it can't be returned, can't be reconsidered? You know, we think it should be reconsidered. We think that there's issues that need to be addressed before you purchase that property. So that's my comments. And yes, I do think you do need to be more transparent, especially the person who discovered this just happened to stumble across it. You know, we knew nothing about it until this person found out about it and then let everybody else know about it. So, you know, you need to be more transparent and certainly publicize what you're up to.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right, future agenda items. Sounds like, Ida, do you want to put something on the next agenda?
Yeah, maybe a discussion on just the academics and what we might want to see,
Like an
just as some sort of
update?
thing.
Okay, all right. All right, anybody else? Jim, anything for future agenda?
I agree with Ida about that. I think
Okay,
I'd like to have a discussion, and I would like to think more about it myself, about, you know, what a board can really do to help improve student performance. But it's something I've thought about, and I think it's worth a discussion. I also would like to have a future agenda, not in January necessarily, but a deeper dive into a long-range development plan. I think the property is an example of something where it was an opportunity, but we don't have a 20-year plan. The capital projects plans are 6 years at a time. It's not a 20-year vision. And we're working with significant amounts of tax money that we are investing for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And I think we have suffered as a community by not having really developed in collaboration with all of our stakeholders, the community, the families, the kids, a long-range development plan. And I think I like a quote from Ben Franklin on that: failing to plan is planning to fail. And we don't want to, I don't plan to fail. None of us plan to fail, but we do, I think we really do need a plan. And for example, if there was a 20-year plan and that was clearly articulated and discussed with the community, there wouldn't be a surprise if that was part of the plan to put a school out there. But it isn't really part of a long-range plan. It's grabbing at a potential opportunity. And I think sometime in the spring, I'd like to, or maybe even next summer, but sometime I think we should work towards having a long-range development plan that includes capital projects, student success and achievement, the future of the CTE program, which I think is, you know, we're well positioned to grow that in a very important way for the whole educational system. So that's it.
thank you, Jim. Anybody else? No?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'd like to mention future agenda item. We have a meeting next week, I understand. And it's a superintendent position, listening opportunity. In the interest of transparency and letting people know, we should let people know that we are going to meet next week because we have a very serious decision to make about the future of this district in regards to the superintendent. And we want to listen to the community and to staff and find out what people have to offer. It would help us in making a wise decision. Next week at Excelsior at 5 o'clock, I understand.
Yes, 5 to 7.
All right, our board evaluation documents are online like always, and is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Hi.
All right, meeting is adjourned at 8:05. So, here's something really funny. I was